experience. I wanted to offer just a few comments and some suggestions on a common experience many of us are sharing, and that is the experience of strong, unpleasant sensation, sometimes known as pain. There's so much to talk about skillful means on working with unpleasant sensation, but I think there are just three things I wanted to offer. The first is just remembering the second arrow. And when you have an experience, to really explore how you're holding your experience. It's quite natural, and certainly in my experience, when I'm feeling strong, unpleasant sensation, to find myself in a strong mental reactive state and kind of get into catastrophizing sometimes. Hell, I'll never walk again, that sort of thing. But it's helpful to bring into our practice the awareness of Vedana. And Vedana is sort of that felt sense of sensation. That any sensation that arises is going to fall into one of three categories. It'll be sensation that is unpleasant, a sensation that you'll find pleasant, and then all the sensations that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. They have kind of a neutral quality. And of course, our natural instinctive reaction is to want to fix and nuke unpleasant sensation. Our reaction to pleasant sensation is to strategize as to how we can keep it and amplify it and make sure it never goes away. And our reaction to neutral sensation generally is boredom. We kind of get lost in the neutrality of it. So just to notice that reaction can be immensely helpful. And this kind of leads into the second remembrance. And this is remembering this practice of rain. That when you experience strong sensation, to see it as clearly as you can, to recognize it. It's also important to really inquire if you can be with it, because you may not be able to. If it feels like it's too much, if it feels like it's overwhelming, it might be wiser to shift your attention in some way, to change your posture, or just to take a break from it. Let it know another time you'll be back to be with it. And if you do have the presence and the conditions to be with it, then you can begin this active investigation to really be as intimate as you can with it, and to explore this profound effect sometimes of offering loving presence, to offer empathy, compassion, and track how that might invoke some felt shift inside. And the third point is really more a little bit around the sort of that technology of investigation of strong sensation. Awareness is something like a lens. You can take this power of awareness and you can narrow it down, just like you can take a magnifying glass and shine light through it and burn a hole in it, leave. Or you can let it be wide open, like you're standing next to a plate glass window and just sort of feeling that broad kind of diffused light. And this can be a helpful remembrance when you're working with strong sensation. That it's possible to narrow your attention down to actually investigate really deeply and intimately into that play of sensation. Is it possible to get into like a microscopic level, to really examine the play of neutral, pleasant, and unpleasant sensations? Well, where do the unpleasant sensations end and where do the neutral ones begin? Can you actually locate that in the body? Can you locate that in the felt sense? It's a challenging practice. It requires concentration, but oftentimes what I find is it reveals something very important, and that is this quality of impermanence. If I look at my strong, unpleasant sensation / pain, from a distance, it looks solid. But when I can bring my attention inside of it, there's a quality of aliveness to it. I find sometimes that the unpleasant sensations they're kind of moving around a little bit, almost like electrons. So that can be a helpful way sometimes of working with strong sensation. Another option which can be helpful is actually to kind of zoom out on the sensation. Because there's a natural tendency when we're experiencing unpleasant sensation for the mind to fixate. And it can be helpful sometimes to explore all the other aspects of the felt sense in the body. When I have a migraine that feels kind of overwhelming, I notice my mind goes right to that occipital ridge, just fixating. But when I can open my awareness and ask, well, where don't I feel it? Where do I feel neutral or pleasant sensations in my body? I almost always have this little aha where I'll realize that 94% of my body feels pleasant or neutral. 6% is freaking out. But if I can hold it in that larger context, it changes my relationship to that unpleasant sensation. And if I can find sort of this dance of holding kind of the fullness of it, or maybe even just to keep my attention in the pleasant and neutral, that sometimes that unpleasant sensation will begin to shift and move in different ways. Pat used the phrase that you are developing yourself as a contemplative artist. And as we deepen our practice, you'll find that this practice becomes very intuitive. One of the most profound questions that I find helpful when I'm working with strong sensation is when I can locate that sensation. And when I can recognize and locate it, when I can really sense it, I'll inquire, how do you want me to be with you right now? What do you need right now? And then listen. And that question can help to deepen an intimate relationship with that unpleasant sensation. And I might have a felt sense that it just wants me to really be with it very, very intimately, or perhaps a broader sense, or perhaps it's calling for empathy or compassion, or perhaps it just wants to be seen. It becomes a very rich investigation that goes entirely against the stream. When we feel unpleasant sensation, our natural tendency is to push it away. When you can turn your attention into it, to lean into it, and have tea with it, sometimes new possibilities arise where they didn't exist before. So with that, we have just a few minutes if there are any questions. Yes.
My question is about the opposite, which is the boredom piece. I'm finding as I'm settling into the week here and the excitement and the nervousness of the initial couple of days have worn off, that I'm experiencing more boredom, especially during the sitting. So I'm wondering what instructions you have for approaching that.
Yeah, what a great question. When we experience unpleasant sensation, it's pretty easy to be with it because it's right there. And it's really fun to have the pleasant sensations. They're very engaging, very enlivening. And the question becomes, well, what do you do with the in-between? What do you do when there's just kind of a quality of neutrality? There's nothing special going on. So the hardcore response, which I found helpful, is that boredom is the failure to pay attention. Because what I find for myself is, what I'm saying to myself is, there's nothing going on. When in fact there's a lot going on. But what it requires is I have to, that sense of neutrality or boredom is actually calling me to yet another level of intimate investigation. That when there's nothing going on, well, there are sounds going on. There's temperature going on. There's sensation going on. So the invitation is to notice that without judgment. And then to simply refresh your attention to, well, what is happening? And is it possible to bring concentration, bring awareness to that? And it can be, at times, kind of a deepening into subtlety, but that sense of neutrality can be that you're at a very subtle level of noticing. And it becomes an invitation to become even more subtle and more intimate with what's going on inside you and around you. I hope that helps. Thanks.